Hi, and welcome to the second episode of Turning Point. By now, you know that Turning Point is about people who shifted their careers somewhere halfway through their professional journey. I've always been intrigued by why people did it and how they did it, how they had the courage to do it, to give away what they were familiar with and try something new. Our guest today is Ash Bishnoi. Ash and I were colleagues in the planning department of the erstwhile HTA, or Hindustan Thompson Associates. Now known as Wunderman Thompson, we worked together in the planning department there. Then I left Mumbai and I was back after 6 or 7 years, and I heard that Ash had become an investment banker. I was intrigued, from advertising to investment banking. I thought it's quite a dramatic shift. And that's why I've selected Ash to speak to us today and to get some insights on, how he decided to shift, what did he do, how it made sense to him. Because today Ash is MD and CEO of Mahindra Mutual Funds. So he's been eminently successful after making this change. Hi Ash, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Prabs, for having me on this show. I've actually never thought of my career as being anything spectacular or remarkable. Uh, but yes, so you were gone, and I was having a lot of fun in advertising. But I met this eminent gentleman from capital markets on one of my assignments. And he said to me, and he wanted to hire me, and he said to me that, Ashutosh, there are only three ways how middle class people like you and me can become truly rich. Number one, you have to have a technological idea that will change the world, which we really don't have. Number two, you have to be a superb entertainer, which also is not a skill we either of us have. But number three, you invest your money in the stock market. And then he gave me the example of Warren Buffett. And he gave me Warren Buffett's biography. For a 33-year-old, what more did you want as an exciting challenge to overcome? My thinking about my career was always driven by how much fun I was having in my work. In some ways, I hold advertising responsible for that, because in advertising, as you know, you're never working on one thing at a time. You're working on several industries in parallel, completely different brands, products, categories, consumers, and it's also exciting to work on all that at the same time. So in some ways, my brain got hardwired to work on different things. So I guess I found my next big challenge in capital markets, and I moved on.
So Ash, looking back, did you start enjoying yourself right away in investment banking, and did you enjoy yourself as much as you did in advertising? What happened? Can you tell us a bit about that?
I remember the first day at work in DSP Merrill Lynch, and all these guys could talk about was the stock market, and I was like very baffled. I knew nothing about it. But then I determinedly sat down and said, let me figure out. So I took the help of one of the senior investment bankers, and I said, so how do you do this thing? How do you value the company? So he said, well, read the balance sheet. You'll know. So I sat down with my first balance sheet to read in detail. And I never realized that I had a knack to understand these numbers. Maybe it came from my having graduated as a BCom honors in NM college, except, you did BCom, you wrote tests and exams just because you had to pass them and score something. But when I started to read numbers, they spoke to me. I figured I had a knack for these things, and in fact, I find myself fascinated by what I read in balance sheets and between the lines, and therefore maybe there was a knack. I didn't realize I had it all through my career in advertising, but here I was enjoying reading these seemingly boring books and making sense out of them.
So Ash, looking back, did you start enjoying yourself right away in investment banking, and did you enjoy yourself as much as you did in advertising? What happened? Can you tell us a bit about that?
I would say that advertising gave me a lot. Every morning you woke up and saw the newspaper or saw the television, and you felt proud about something that you just did yesterday or last week. it was a great place to be. It offered me an opportunity to interact with the best brains in the top of the organizations, in the client organizations. So it wasn't as if it gave me a lot. But when I grudgingly joined mutual funds, quite honestly, I was very excited to be in investment banking, deal making. When I got into the mutual fund space, initially I thought it would be boring. Who wants to just keep investing money kind of thing. You really want to make a deal, you want to get, crack a deal, you make some good profit out of it. But then as I started to engage with it more, the idea grew. And one of those days, early in my mutual fund career, I remember something I read, and I went back and reread, and I recommend it to anybody who has anything to do with the mutual fund space, is to read Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker, in his early writings in late 60s and 70s, actually spoke about what the mutual fund meant to a community and a country and an economy. This was a fascinating view, which I hold to be true and has become true, is that from being capital being owned by capitalists, capital began to be owned by home and households via the mutual funds. This is a transition fully witnessed mostly today in the United States and Europe, not so much in the emerging economies like India, China, etc., where the household participation in mutual fund is still very small. But the full impact of this you see in larger and wider economies, where households via the mutual funds determine where the money will go and how it will be invested. If you think about the whole concept of ESG investing, which is environment, social, and governance investing, it's all coming out of households wanting a better lifestyle for themselves, and therefore mandating their money managed by investment managers and mutual funds to be only invested in such companies that uphold the ESG principles. This is not a capitalist play anymore. It is not Mr. Rockefeller or Mr. Ford or somebody like that deciding he's going to put his capital where. In India, we're still pretty much in the early stages. Capital is still owned by capitalists. But the transition of the economy gets completed into democratization of capital when households actually decide where the capital will go. And if we reach that point in time, and the only vehicle for that is mutual funds, I think it's a great service to an economy and a nation. That keeps me there. Of course, in the middle, I try to go back into media and marketing as publisher of Reader's Digest. It was a very, very satisfying stint. It lasted more than a couple of years. But then eventually I moved back because it was just too slow for my liking. Capital markets is far more paced as a business.
Well, I can understand that you wanted to move away from advertising, but what made you think of investment banking? Was it, a natural kind of shift? Was it an opportunity somebody presented to you and you found it very attractive? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Perhaps my first stint outside of advertising was at Merrill Lynch, with the Indian subsidiary DSP Merrill Lynch. And when I went there, something struck me as so different from advertising. In advertising also, we did a lot of research work, a lot of intelligence work. It was intelligence-based service, as was investment banking where I first went. But here were maybe 20 people generating revenue, maybe 20 times that of HTA out of the 20 people's work. So it just struck me that how much more productive were these guys? And they were analyzing information which was all, calibrated in mathematically so well, and using it to price securities, take companies to market. That is one. The second thing is, in advertising, you made a big pitch for a brand's advertising, and then, you signed an agreement, and then it became an exclusivity agreement where clients would expect you to not deal with competitors, and you had a few years long relationship. Exactly the opposite was true in investment banking. Every time you had to make a pitch, a competitive pitch, even if it was the same client that you were dealing with. Every deal had to be pitched. But The upside was the volume of money you made was tremendously large. So it kept you agile. You were constantly on your toes with research, information, valuation, market, because you had to hunt your food every time and bring it home. So I kind of liked that. I did go back to advertising, I tried, but what I ended up doing there in my second stint in HTA was investment banking deals. I helped with the WPP buyback. I did a lot of deals for HTA, and if you remember, in Bangladesh, Nepal, and West Asia for IMRB, whole bunch of things I did from the corporate office. But I liked doing more of the investment banking part than the actual advertising when I went back. So somewhere there was that insight that this is what I like to do.
I'm sure that there are many people who have the secret yearning to do something else. I myself did, but for whatever reason, I spent 42 years in advertising. I'm obviously one of those who was not courageous enough to make the shift. But do you have any kind of advice for those kind of people? We'd love to hear from you.
Well, I'm hardly the guy to give advice. It's not like I have a great corporate career to speak about. But what I learned is you can either chase excitement and fun in work, or you could chase a corporate ladder. There are extremely few lucky people who get to do both in the same place. I haven't met anybody yet. So that's how it is. If you're going to chase a ladder and you like to be called chairman, CEO, etc. of some company and you're early in your life and you want to have power of running a company, then probably you're not the kind of guy who will want to keep chasing what he wants to do, the next bright thing to do. So yeah, probably they are mutually exclusive domains is what I have learned. But for my money's worth, if I was to do it again, I don't think I'll do it any different. This is who I am. I like to chase the next new thing.
Hey Ash, that's been a really great session with you. Love to hear you speaking about your professional life. I want to thank you very much for having agreed to be a guest on Turning Point. Thank you so much.
Thank you, perhaps, for having me.